So how do we heal from irritable bowel syndrome? Number one, stop. Stop the foods that irritate the lining of the gut. What are the foods that do that? Caffeine, refined sugar, the hybridized wheat. We touched on the hybridized wheat last night, and I'm going to explore it a bit more tomorrow in the acid alkaline lecture. Dairy. I acknowledge that Lulabelle in the paddock eating organic grass, who gets milked and made a proper cultured yogurt out of it, that can be healing to the gut. But there aren't many Lulabelles in the paddock. If you were to feed the milk in the supermarket to a newborn calf, the calf would die. So sorry, you can't even compare to what's in there. You're best keeping away from it. People say, what milk do you drink, Barbara? I say, I'm weaned, I eat food. Milk is for babies. We're the only creature that drinks milk past babyhood. Number one, stop all the things that can irritate that lining. Number two, take a probiotic. What's a probiotic? A Lactobacillus acidophilus bifidus bacterium supplement. Do you know they are the two permanent bacteria that live in your gut? All the others come from those two. Number three, do you remember Psalm 103 verse 14? God made herbs for the service of man. There are two herbs that coat, soothe and heal the lining of the gut, and they're both a bit slimy because the lining of the gut is sliming. I think we all know aloe vera. And aloe vera has a growth stimulant. It stimulates rapid healing in the lining of the gut. The other herb, when you put water with it, it just goes a bit slippery. It's called slippery elm. And slippery elm coats, soothes and heals the lining of the gut. Is it that simple? It is. Let me give you a story of a lady that came to this lecture in New Zealand when I was there about 18 months ago. She said, I'm 70, I've had irritable bowel syndrome for 30 years. She's been on cortisones, anti-inflammatories. She said, the things that you have told me tonight, no one has ever told me. She said, no one ever told me that these foods were irritating my gut. She was very excited. That was Tuesday night. She went home, she immediately implemented everything she'd heard. She had coconut cream on her breakfast instead of cow's milk. She had a bit of honey on her breakfast instead of sugar. She stopped the wheat and bought some spelt sourdough bread. I think she had some millet for breakfast instead of her oat. Some can handle oats, some cannot. She started to have a dandelion instead of a coffee. She immediately implemented. She's 70, 30 years she's been struggling with this. Thursday night, what's that? 2 days, 2 nights. Thursday night she came up to me and she said, I've stopped bleeding from the colon. She said, I have no more pain. She said, instead of going 6 times a day, she said, today I went 3 times. Wow. 2 days. Is she healed? No. But she's on the road. You're the doctor. What has her body just told her? Yes. Yeah? Those cells that line the gastrointestinal tract, they're remade every 3 to 5 days. So the gut can respond very quickly. Where's my little 2-letter word? If you give it the right conditions. I have seen that happen again and again. How often did she take slippery elm? She was taking it before every meal and before she went to sleep at night. So it coated, soothed and healed the way down. If someone's going to the toilet 10 times a day, they can take slippery elm every half hour. You see, you play with it. You play with it. As the healing happens, you can ease back on it. Most of your food is absorbed by the halfway down your small intestine. And then we come down to the ileocecal valve, and that ileocecal valve here stops anything going back that way. Everything coming out of your small intestine into your large intestine is a little liquid. So one of the main functions of the large intestine is to take water out so stools are formed so you can pass with ease. So what happens if you've got the other problem, which means you go once a week or twice a week? Dr. Kellogg said 3 intakes of food a day should equal 3 evacuations a day. So if you eat 10 times a day, how many times should you go? So what can we do to make sure we are going regularly? Drink adequate water. If you're dehydrated, more water gets taken out than should be taken out. Eat plant foods. Plant foods sweep the colon. And by the way, is the appendix a mistake? Does God make mistakes? No. Well, what's the role of the appendix? It has 2 main roles. It's called the colon's oil can. It lubricates the contents to get it through easily, and it also releases antibacterial fluids, so that if what's coming out of here is toxic, how would it be toxic? If a person's eating a high meat diet, which putrefies, and a lot of sugar and alcohol, what's coming out of here is pretty nasty. And so the appendix has to quickly release that antibacterial fluid to sort of calm it down so that it can get it out of your body without poisoning you. Whew. So make sure you eat a lot of plant foods to get that sweeping action through. Right down near the end, you see there's a little loop. And there's a muscle there that's holding that little last part loop up. And we're very glad of that muscle. It's called puborectalis. And that muscle prevents us having accidents. But let me show you something about the puborectalis. Here is the throne. And here is the person sitting on the throne. When a person sits on the throne, puborectalis remains taut. Now, things can still get through. But if a person sits on the throne and in the front of the throne they put a little stool, or they might buy a squatty potty from Bed Bath and Beyond, and they're mimicking the squatting position, the knees are up in the air. And when the knees are up in the air, mimicking the squatting position, then puborectalis relaxes, and when puborectalis relaxes, then the colon totally opens and the contents can be released with great ease. Do you know, in many countries today, squatting still happens. I was in Punjab, India, at the beginning of the year, and as I travelled down to New Delhi, I stayed in an apartment there before I flew out the next day. It was a beautiful apartment, all lined with marble. I went into my bathroom, all marble, and oh, there's a hole in the ground. That was the toilet. In many countries, people still squat. And it has found to be, scientifically and medically they prove it today, the best way to do the daily evacuation. If someone's not going and they're sitting and they decide to put some strain there, it puts a lot of strain on the anus and hemorrhoids can come out. And hemorrhoids are not very nice. So squatting can heal hemorrhoids, squatting can prevent hemorrhoids, because squatting takes all the pressure off the anus. Probably 2 years ago, squatty potties were about $50. Well, they're becoming quite popular. And so I think you can get them for about even $20 now. But it's worthwhile investing on that. But it's also a good idea to practice this. Got that? Every day we should squat. And in many countries that's a very natural position. It became a very natural position for me when I read a book called Active Birth by Janet Velasquez. And I practiced squatting all through my pregnancy, and when my baby was born, the whole baby flew out of me with one push, with the bag intact there to catch the baby. Wow, squatting does wonderful things. because squatting opens that whole pelvic area. So it's very important to practice squatting. If you see, when you do squat, when you're coming up, all the pressure's put on your quads, your thighs. So if you can't do that, just go up and down like this every time you're washing the dishes or doing things, and get those muscles strong again. Very important to strengthen that pelvic girdle so that we keep the muscles strong.